Hello and welcome to another episode of the Selfish Podcast. Today's guest is Steve Hughes, who many of you will already know. Maybe some of you won't, so I'm happy to introduce him to you. So, hi, Steve. Welcome. Can you just share with the audience where in the world are you?
I'm in Manchester in the United Kingdom, the glorious city of Manchester.
Glorious city of Manchester.
What used to be a quite glorious city when I lived here
Nice.
back
And
in the day.
yeah, I'm over here in Spain, so it's beautiful we can connect in this time and make use of technology rather than technology using us. And what I'd like to know with my guests, I'd like to get them to know more personally and with the audience so we can sort of just get a better understanding. Can you paint me a picture of what your childhood was like, say pre 10 years old?
I'll tell you what, before we even begin, looking at where you're sitting, I'm so fucking jealous. Like, if I was just there, I just feel better than I do right now. My slight headache would go. I could wander around the sun. I could sit on that bench there, lay on the grass, just lie on the dirt in the sun, just like a dog.
Yeah, I was just thinking of my dog. He just, and
I,
you see the
I
agility
know.
they have from rest to just action is in a second. That's what we all want.
There's something I learned when I used to go to festivals where you could see this program in yourself. After about 2 days in the bush, and I haven't showered or anything, that's when you realise that you don't have to be careful when you sit down on the dirt. You can actually just lay in the dirt. You know what I mean? And I love getting to that zone where I just lay in the dirt like a rock with the sun on me.
I had to train myself back into it. I had to sort of uncondition myself, should I say. I was to go and sit on the floor. It was so sort of taboo, and it was like you say, dirt. I was like, no, it's earth. This is clean. This is probably the cleanest thing I will be near all day.
Mate, completely. And when I say dirt, I don't
Yeah.
even mean dirt. It's like, yeah, nothing's going to get you there. It's like that was pretty handy for me growing up in the bush, I guess. Suburbia in the bush, not the complete bush, but like you could get into the bush.
So whereabouts did you grow up? You clearly got an Australian accent. Whereabouts in Australia?
Blue Mountains, which is about 100 kilometres outside of Sydney. So if you've never been to Australia, you've all seen a picture of the Harbour Bridge Opera House bit. So when you've got that bit, there's Sydney. So if you go west, then you hit suburbia like you don't have in Europe, that you have in Canada and the United States, and probably South Africa. That sort of 100 kilometres of suburbia.
Would that
your
be
work.
my from my childhood? The only things that would say Australian influence was Crocodile Dundee and Neighbours. Yeah. So would that
See,
be where Neighbours was sort of that
those
suburbia?
neighbours is and neighbours was a middle class bit, right? So, but see, working class is not the same degradation in Australia and that as it is in Europe, in Britain especially. Although we haven't, right? But some of these, but you're out in the western suburbs, right? Right. So you've got these 100 kilometres of suburbs, cul-de-sacs. That's where your basic families and working class would exist. And who's out there? Plumbers, people who used to do practical jobs when we had a practical job world. And so when you go up through there, you get to this river, and then you hit the Blue Mountains. You hit this mountain range which you go up. So I'd live in there. I lived at the top, the beginning of this mountains. So it's kind of, you've hit bush as well now. So we were kind of living in neighbours looking, bit more rural, but neighbours looking environments. But we could get on bikes and hit the bush.
Oh, nice.
Right. So we used to go camping down these huge gorges and stuff, and it was like a prehistoric world. But you could see a train through in the cutting.
Mm.
And if we climbed up this gorge, we're just sort of in suburbia. But when we went down the gorge, it was like no one existed. So it was kind of, and you took it for granted because you just grew up there. But I really, getting to the point was that's where I don't have a fear of dirt and germs because I went camping and sleeping, and I realised how healthy it made you, and just I had this Australian chick who used to work on a comedy club door in London. She goes to me once, she goes, do you ever get sick when you go overseas? I went, no. She goes, neither do I. She goes, all my English friends seem to get sick. And I think sometimes I used to meet English people, they go, I hate camping. I thought, of course you do, because you've never been camping. Right? You went to a campsite run by a whingy couple, and it got soggy, and then you walked into the village and went to the pub at night. And then you walked back to your tent and thought that was camping. It's not fucking camping. Camping is hitting the bush. You know, we used to like to go sort of when we were young, you know, obviously influenced by cowboy films and whatnot, and just like to go warrior and just not take, you have to take knives and open tins and cook on sticks. And we even got so feral as we ate a lizard once, me and this guy. That was a bad idea.
Yeah. What, just tasted bad, or?
Oh no, we got fucking sick. We thought we'd play Aboriginal, but there's more delivered in the bush than if you want to just start eating lizards and things. And it wasn't even big, it's like this thing. And then we even ate a bit. We weren't that brave, but that was enough for both of us. Like 2 in the morning to just be spewing up God knows what for the next. But it's good for you, So yeah, I am envious of where you are now. Look at it. Look how quiet and nice it is. Nature just sitting there, being
nice. It's just I'd say stillness, but there's so much activity when you pay attention. The birds, the insects.
That's what I love about
the life of the bush itself.
That's what I used to. That's why I love that juxtaposition you get in nature. Sometimes it can be it's still and quiet, but you also realise, but it's all going on.
Yeah, it's like the most active place. That's why for me, it's like someone says, do you get lonely? And I'm like, I'm surrounded by life all the time.
Yeah, I know.
What was school like for you when you was a kid?
Oh, well, you got back to the original question. What was my life like? Well, as we discussed before, let's get straight to the point. It was very dysfunctional. Divorce, abusive female figures, not masculine male figures, no hardcore sexual abuse or anything, and no having to deal with alcoholics either. That was handy in hindsight if I think about it. As much as dysfunctional as my childhood was, at least I realised in hindsight, there was no alcoholics there, and there was no mentally ill in the sense of what's called mentally ill. I don't particularly believe in mental illness, but you know what I mean. So in one sense, it was good in that sense, really, in hindsight. Yeah, as you get older, you realise that some of the things you didn't have to experience were pretty fucking good. But, that kind of dysfunctionality turned me into a decent artist. And school, well, I didn't like it. As we were discussing before, as the show started, there's just sort of things that I just realised this is not, I wasn't that good at it. I didn't find right brain thinking, science, maths. I couldn't do. It's like my brain doesn't even work on that level. If you want me to write an album or a comedy show, I could go, yeah, all right. And they go, attach this file to an email and send it. My brain was just goes, oh, not interesting, right? Maybe it's not healthy to be that out of balance, but yeah, kind of school. I just couldn't wait to get out of there. Really. I just found it, it was the 70s, so, and it's Australia, so it was very sport. If you weren't good at sport, it's a big deal. And I just wasn't good at sport, and I wasn't good at school. And as we were, till I was about 16, and I started when I saw Iron Maiden, I was getting into music before that. I had no idea what to do. It's almost like, oh my, because the idea of getting a job was like, because already at school was like boring. Like, why are they making me go? Why are you taking my whole childhood? Which is how I see it. So that's what, and then they give you the jobs. They train you for the jobs, don't they? 5 days on, 2 days off. And then they take your whole childhood. And then they want to take your life and give you money. You're not. You're just still a slave. It was all slavery, wasn't it? It was all just funny. I saw this the other day in a video that, the Walmart logo,
Yeah.
which is the sun, which has a lot to do with occultic stuff. It's also on the back of all the Walmart jackets, which I thought, what that represents? What? You're still slaves with the sun on your back. So. They're even telling you, right? They've given you the logo on the shirt. They didn't stop slavery. We know that. I used to do a joke about it, and they go, they probably looked at slaves and went, well, we've got to feed them, we've got to give them somewhere to sleep, and we've got to do this. Why don't we just let them go and tell them they're free? And all right, you can go, and we'll see you back here at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. Because, of course they didn't give that up. So, and as we were discussing, they wanted 8 hours of my day, not including travel to get there or expenses to get there. And they wanted to give me a small amount of money, which I love the way they call it minimum wage. Well, they're not joking, are they? They never called it maximum wage. So it's funny how everything's inverted and in reverse, isn't it? They tell you, but they've programmed you to think that this is a protective mechanism against the system ripping you off. There's a minimum wage that they have to pay you. See how we're protecting you? But actually what we're doing is telling you it's a minimum wage and you're doing it anyway. So you acquiesce because we've programmed you to think it's something else. And so in that sense, they're not doing anything to you. Here's the great tricks of all these things they play on everybody, isn't it? That I think if they're working on the idea of natural law and whatever you put out comes back to you, then this is for everybody. So then what they do is they trick you into absconding from the karma. Why? Because they didn't do anything to you. You did it. We told you. So now we didn't put anything out there. So we don't get the repercussions. You get the repercussions. All right? Because we have to tell you what we're going to do to you, so you do it, not us. We're not doing anything to you. But we're not gonna make it obvious. We're gonna, in any kind of, the strongest survive psychologically. If you want to go into a satanic idea of what? Well, if you don't, I know old Roman sayings, the one that, well, if you don't know what's being done to you, it's not my problem. Why? Because we'll show you. It's almost like I saw this woman one day, and she was demanding, the state can't stop her child from going to school. Now, the state could suggest something. Well, it's not even the state anymore, but we use that terminology. That saying your child doesn't wear a mask, it can't go to the school. And you'd get up in arms about this. But see, the system already knows what the school is. It's a brainwashing centre. And if you don't know that, then I don't know why anybody's sending their kids to school. It's now grooming them, creating non-realities in them. It's a complete brainwashing centre. It's the place to make them into worker slaves. This is what it is. They know that. Now, they just threatened you that your child can't go there because you think it's something else. So they gave you an out.
Yeah.
Because they just said that if you don't do this, then the child can't go to our slave program system. But because you don't know what's going on, then you stood up and demanded, I have the right. My child has the right, and no one can stop me. And then they go, fair enough.
Yeah.
Because you just demanded. You just demanded.
Yeah, no, it was very similar to me growing up. I when it come to school, I really didn't resonate with school. The only thing I liked about school was the socializing with people, a few friends, it was like, oh, that's a bit of a distraction from pains in home life. But the actual lessons and the school, I never felt like I was getting anything that was worth any value, should I say. I never felt like I was getting anything that would take me anywhere, do anything. I could clearly see the steps and stages of where it could go, and I didn't want any of that. So I was like, that doesn't really inspire me to try hard. I was always the one that if I didn't try hard, I at least passed. So I was like, I don't really need to put in more effort than that. When all my friends are studying and revising, I just couldn't see the point. I was like, why spend more time at home trying to get a better grade when I don't even want the grade anyway? I'm only going because I'm told I have to, and a little bit of pressure from like your father to get a good grade and come home and he goes, "Oh, you done well, son." And that's you done what you should.
Mate, I
And
started laughing then because it just triggered something in me when you said that. Like, it's just, I couldn't see any point. I don't know what do you want me to do with this information?
yeah. And it's like when I was younger, a little bit, so a little bit about more about me, and I bring up what you said earlier about mental health. Is my mum had mental health, as we would say, yeah, which I now see as she had a health issue. It's all encompassing. It wasn't just a problem with her mind.
No.
Her physical body was a mess too. Yeah, her purpose, her life. There's so many aspects that were contributing. The amount of poisoning she was consuming, stress and trauma in life. But she was diagnosed with severe schizophrenia and depression from when I was about 5 years old, and she became a single mother, looked after me and my brother, and I say looked after in quotes. We became her carers. She couldn't. We went loads of time without food. She was like the worst case that you would see on a film. When you see in America someone pushing the trolley, screaming and shouting and talking to themselves. She was like that, but she had 2 kids. And we went in and out of
that's fucking brutal.
Yeah, we went in and out of all different types of mental institutes and hospitals, taking her there. She could be there for a year and she'd be the worst case in there. But that drove me from a very young age. From the very beginning, I was suicidal at about 7 or 8 years old. I couldn't handle the pain of life. I couldn't see the point of life. I was questioning life and questioning taking my own. And it was just painful. It also made me question religion because I came from a slightly Christian background and I prayed and cried and felt like I got no answers, watched others and analyzed, but it made me hyper aware.
Of course, man. As I said before, I didn't know it was that extreme, and I was grateful I didn't have to deal with that or alcoholics because that's hardcore on kids.
Yeah, and it was a really bizarre experience. It made me really self-conscious. I was really paranoid in school that I'd be judged for it because everyone in my school would have known her because they would have seen her wandering the streets inappropriately dressed, sometimes screaming, shouting, having imaginary arguments, or begging and all sorts of stuff at all different times of the day. So that gave me a lot of anxiety when I was a kid. And you'll find this funny. I found this hilarious now that I look back. Is they gave me a social worker at one point when I was in middle school. So somewhere between the ages of sort of 9 and 11. And in our school, you have a few hundred people, and the playground, the concrete playground, is on view from all the windows of all the classes. And the social worker would come in during class time, take me out of class, take me to the middle of that concrete playground to play on my own with him. Like we'd have to play a game or something. And I'm there going, everyone can see me. This is bizarre beyond belief. Yeah. And it's like I was already paranoid about this and stressed out. And now everybody is seeing this really weird thing. So that I found was hilarious looking back. It's like, who thought that's a good idea?
I mean, having to experience things like this, as we were talking before the show started, it kind of wakes you up to things, doesn't it? I mean, there is those ideas that come down the line of some people that go, well, you chose your life. Did you, you chose the parents, you chose it's a stream of thought. Maybe karmically the soul just comes back to, well, you're gonna get kickstarted from the word go. Right. So some
like
people come back and they run around with parents who love them and they're going on bike rides and run around and getting a horse for their birthday and stuff.
Yeah. Well, I had a good duality. My father was saw me nearly every weekend. We hid everything about my mother as much as possible for him because we didn't want to hurt him. Me and my brother, he's a couple of years older, were well aware at the time that sharing this could either hurt my mother or hurt our father. So we just didn't talk about it. Nor did we want to talk about it on the weekends. But he would take us camping. And I found out later he really tried to get custody of us. But even though my mum was diagnosed with severe mental illness, because she was a female, she got custody. He just could not get it at that time, especially in England, no matter what. So that I find interesting. But he would take us camping.
That is interesting. And what year would that be?
Ooh, early 90s.
Fuck. See? How did my father get custody of me and my brother in 1974 or something?
Yeah, I was speaking to someone from Japan, and she was saying it's traditional that the father gets custody. It's hard for a woman. She got custody from her father, and she was abused by her father and uncle, and he still got custody. But she goes, that's the tradition. Is the male has a different hierarchy.
That's old feudal Japanese stuff, I guess. I'm not
Yeah,
well versed on their culture, but yeah, you can see it. Yeah, well, that's what's funny. They think they think the patriarchy's outrageous here.
but no, that was bizarre. But the camping trips I used to go on with my dad, and he was really poor. We always came from really bad poverty, and then, like you say, minimum wage. But he would buy a cheap van, do the best with it, and just take us away, buy a can of beans on the way and some bread. And then we'd go park up somewhere like on a beach. He wouldn't pay for a campsite because he couldn't afford it, nor did he want to. And we'd just park on a beach for a weekend somewhere, and he'd just let us play. And that to me now I can look back and go, oh my God, if it weren't for that, that's why I'm still alive.
Yeah, yeah,
And it was that
totally.
nature, like I'm in now. It
Yeah,
was that just being there, being away from everything, being
yeah. A
actually
release
present.
from the stress, man.
Yeah, and being present in actual the real quality of the world, which is
Yeah,
abundant around us. I say to a lot of
yeah.
people that it's really easy to see the bad things in life. Like I can go to a lake here and I'll see a pile of rubbish, like just someone's just come along, had a party, bagged up their rubbish, and then just chucked the rubbish inside of the bush. It's like they've half done a job and then just chucked it. And someone says, doesn't that drive you mad? And I said, only if I'm distracted. I said, that little bag of rubbish, even if it's two or three, is insignificant to the vast beauty and amazement around me. And I said, no, just pick that up, chuck it in the bin. Ain't I lucky I get to do something good?
Well, see,
Yeah.
that's good because I understand because I can go both ways in that viewpoint where that's my downfall. Is when I just get so. I've always had this. When I grew up in the bush, as I said too, we'd go away. We used to take out probably when we were young. We'd probably cause some chaos, but we soon learned that don't leave shit everywhere. I used to hate it when I'd go to a cave or something. Someone had come along with a spray can and put Robbo was here, and I'm like, which part of you thought you're in a sandstone rock? It looks glorious. Like which part of you thought, oh, I'll get the spray can?
I see it here, even in the middle of nowhere. Someone's managed to get here with a spray can. And I'm like, and they're not even good artists. I would be okay if I saw some really good art.
Yeah,
Occasionally I
yeah,
do. Someone's done an amazing picture, and I'm like, God, that's at least there's a lot of effort gone into that.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
then other times, like you said, Steve was here 2020, and he's like, well, thanks, Steve.
He just did. He just made something beautiful. It was beautiful, mate. It's a strange one. You just I don't know how anyone could just walk away and there's just 12 empty Coke cans and a nappy and just.
Yeah, the amount of nappies, that's the funny one. I find a lot of nappies, and I'm like, who's changing their baby and just throwing their nappy to the bush? And they don't biodegrade, they don't even rot. They're pristine, and you can see they're old.
Which to me, then we can go into the deeper, okay, what's happening here? We could just say there's some irresponsible people.
It's a lack of awareness.
But yeah, but
if you was aware, you wouldn't do it. That's the way I see it.
It's the part of me that just used to get frustrated. Like, which part of you is not thinking that this is all right when you're looking at what's around you? I don't.
Yeah, because
and also, why are you so scared of your own baby shit? Is that what it is? Are you so programmed now that you're that disconnected from nature that just put it in the car, in the boot, or something, and get somewhere? And what are you scared of?
Well, the interesting thing here in Spain, because I go to a lot of remote places, but even in the middle of nowhere, you find these giant trash cans, these giant bins with a lid on them so animals don't get into them and rip it open. But there's places to put your waste almost everywhere. I've noticed so much more than it was in England, and everyone's allowed to use it. It's not like if you use a bin somewhere, someone goes, well, you don't live here, that's not your bin. Yeah, which I've had in England. It's like, no, that's not yours. And it's like, it's everywhere, and it will be within meters. Like everywhere I go, I just go around with a bag and just pick up waste and then put it in the bin because I can. So why not? And but I had to train myself not to be frustrated. I'm like, I'm not going to give the privilege of my emotions, of my anger and frustration to nothing. They're mine. Someone who throws a nappy, they don't deserve to do that to me.
I know what you mean. I know what you mean in that idea.
But you have to uncondition it. because we've been conditioned to be the other way.
But you know what? I think we also, because I'm starting to listen more to this guy at the moment, because I know these. What's the word we should use? I know what you're saying. I've read enough spiritual stuff and Buddhist stuff in the sense of, okay, like, well, you know, I can take control of the reaction of the mind. And therefore, I can become more peaceful by what? By not letting these things from the outside world do anything to me. Right? So that would be the idea of the Buddhist monk training, isn't it? What? Any kind of, you know, you go to one of these 11-day meditations where you don't talk. What's that do? Well, to try and have all these programs come up so that you can not react and start to maybe burn them out of you. Right? But also there is things like anger and hate. And they exist. So that's a part of me that's always gone on. Am I failing at being a spiritual person or a good person? Because I'm not overriding all these all the time. And I've started to look at it differently in the same way they're always going like, you know, how to override negative emotions and get over negative emotions. And I thought, well, straight away, calling it negative, which it could be in the sense of if you want to have this dualism, right? You could use the word negative just to name it. Okay, it's not joy or this or something that's bringing it can be. But is it negative? Like, is anger negative the way it should be never dwelled upon or experienced or pushed out there or hatred? But they're here.
Yeah, they exist. How I look at it.
Right. And we have them. Now, of course, we both know that anger and hatred, when let loose in unevolved reactionary ways, cause violence, damage, harm. But I think what we've got to do is evolve into understanding what these are for. They're for something. I don't think they're just to be overridden and gotten rid of.
Yeah, I think everything has its place. Everything is a tool. Everything can have a use because, like you said, you already have it within you. So why do you have it within you? And I see anger, because anger was an issue that I had for a long time. I had a lot of anger. Luckily, when I was young, went to a boxing club. So I got to just unleash that anger and frustration on the bag. And I never got into actual physical competitive fights because I just wanted to hit the bags, and I'd hit the bags till I was bloody raw on my hands every day. And I got really good.
Yeah, that's great.
But that was also kept the sanity, you know, because it was somewhere, if I didn't release that anger, there was times when I was walking down the street when I was a teenager and I was like, if someone even looks at me the wrong way, that's enough justification to just beat the hell out of them. Luckily, that never actually happened. No one luckily looked at me the wrong way. But there was so much anger and frustration in me that it was just like that. And then that transformed into, I used that anger and frustration to drive myself and what I call an internal dictator. I had this internal dictator who used anger and frustration and pain to fuel my ambitions. And that became conditioned over time that, oh, my anger's good. This is good because this is the only way you would have got here, is because you had this pain, you had this anger, you know, this is what drives you. And that's where I think anger shouldn't exist. Internally in your self-talk, if anger's there, it's not the most productive. Yet in external world, in certain circumstances, if you use anger, it can change that circumstance the fastest. So if there's a drastic change needed, like my dog's just started barking at someone now, if I was to now shout at him and tell him to stop, he would stop. If I said, stop, please stop, I love you, stop, he's not going to stop. Yeah, so I think anger has its uses in the external, but when we use it internally on ourselves, I think that's when it becomes unconstructive. And I don't like positive, negative. Everything to me is either constructive or deconstructive. And that's in harmony, symmetry. So I'm always looking to make things more symmetrical, more harmonized. And I found that certain actions, certain feelings, certain sensations are more constructive. Certain ones are deconstructive. But just like the earth, you need deconstruction, need construction. We briefly talked before about God and atheism and them sort of things. I was always a 99% atheist, but 1% of me could never say an absolute. I couldn't be an absolutist on anything. So I couldn't say I'm absolute 100% atheist. 99%. 1% doesn't know. I was always open to, I can't possibly know. But how I view God now is everything generates, everything has an order, and everything then decays. And there's always that cycle in absolutely everything. You can't look anywhere and see something that's stagnant and not actually in motion, that generated at some point, that had an order and then decayed. You know, so and to me, it's just to try and live within that pattern and be fulfilled. And for me, I don't belong to any religious group. You know, that's not my
No,
place.
no, 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 that's not my place either.
But no, but that would
I didn't grow up with God. My parents had a little dallying with church for a while, and I went to Sunday school for a bit and stole the money from the collection thing when I took it. So, of course, I got ingrained like everybody else, where there's a bit of that fear of the story that they told you, the hell and so forth.
it's love and punishment, isn't it, as well? That's what got me when I was a child. It's like I was trying to pray and ask for mercy. And my nan was from Ireland and she was quite religious. But when she passed, that just all disappeared.
Yeah.
But it still gave me that foundation that I thought I should pray now that I'm suffering. I should pray. I should beg for forgiveness. I should, like, maybe I've done something wrong, you know? And it's like, maybe I'm being punished.
Oh man, well,
And as a kid, it's like to have that mentality already. I can see how deconstructive that is.
oh yeah, yeah. Well, it's and you do question these ridiculous stories that they told you when you were a kid. But obviously, it's deeper, the Bible or so forth, and just going, well, how could you fit two every animal in an ark? Okay.
It's a great work of
But I've been
literary.
listening to John Lamb Lash a lot recently. I like this guy because I wanted proper heretics to listen to, and so from his Gnostic perspective, he verses it well. So I like it. It's something I never thought of, and it was quite obvious, really, just in the way he worded it, in the sense of, well, what they've given us with this, we'll say Christianity or these monotheistic religions, is they've given us a salvationist ideology, haven't they? So somehow we've got to be saved. So you were born into what? Well, sin, isn't it? So your very existence is already flawed and tarnished, which is, in one sense, you're a virus. All right. So, and what you've got to do now is reach these unreachable demands. Could be to do with desire or sexual reproduction or good behavior or never telling a lie, never causing harm to another living creature. You get some of these religions, not Christianity. What are they?
Jainism and
Jains
stuff.
or something that can't kill an insect or something. Well, this is ludicrous. This is so anti-life in a sense. It's like it's almost like dismissing the cycle of like, if nothing really dies, even if you're eating meat, is anything dying? I'm not saying it's great having a factory farm where they're hung up by their legs and filled with hormones and fucking this is demonic science fiction chaos. But really, is the death happening? The only reason you would think there's death happening is if you believe in death, right? Well, people would go, well, what do you mean? And I've only started listening to this recently, but I can see it because really, if you think about an eternal consciousness in that sense, well, you don't believe in death, do you?
Yeah.
Why?
No.
Because the energy is going on, the consciousness is going on. They will tell you not to kill yourself. Why? Because you're not going to relieve yourself of the pain. Because if the pain is in the consciousness and the consciousness is going on, the energy goes on. So the act of suicide really is not going to give you the result you want.
It's actually, yeah. And in one perspective, I see it's actually got to give you a worse result because you're sort of changing that state of energy to transform in a state of pain. And I think that's where it comes in about the moment that you pass, the more harmonious you are with your energy, the more harmonious that transition is. Because a big part of my life is I feared death. And ironically, I was suicidal a lot of my life, while having a fear of death.
Everybody fears death. Well, I've been listening to these guys recently who it's Gnostic, hardcore Gnostic stuff, I think, in the sense of it's just basically going, if you instill the belief of death into a child, then you're going to die. Because this is like, you shouldn't even believe in death. And that's what's funny. If you look at Christianity, what is it? Well, it's the worship of this. Right? What is it? Well, it's this salvationist ideology, this salvationist God, which gave a son to come and take all your filth and then sacrificed. Now there's sacrifice. There's child sacrifice. And every Christmas you put your energy to this child sacrifice, right? Given to you by a bunch of people who don't practice this religion.
Yeah, and for me, it's the stages of death. I've said it before to someone else, and something that I believe is, I don't welcome death. I don't welcome the end. But if it happens when I finish this call, I don't also care. It's not a big deal. It happens when it happens, and I have no problem with it. I'm not welcoming it right now. You know?
No. I know what you mean. Like if we're going to look at if we've all been given the death urge. I was listening to a guy the other night. He goes, "You've got to override your death urge," which is not easy. Then they can trigger you with this death urge. Then if you've got what's going on in the world in the last 2 years, they used to say, what did they do? Well, they told you there was something that would go over borders or cultures or anything. What? Well, death. Right. Oh, you might get the virus, and right. So what's the ancient death urge, isn't it? So you just bang. It's almost like can you push that button in the collective unconscious? Bing. they all get scared, right? Because they all got scared. Lots of them got scared.
Well, lots of people still are.
Yeah. Right.
It's a bit like
I got scared for a bit, but my fear goes from a completely different perspective.
Yeah, and I'd say that scared is interesting because we were talking about anger earlier, and like everything has its place. We have fear is an ability we have. We have shame, we have guilt, we have fear, and it's being scared. These are within us. But if you're in that for a prolonged period of time, it's clearly shown that that's not the most productive way to live life.
Oh no, of course not.
Certain times when it could pop up, that could save your life. Say if it was in a natural environment, and there's a wild boar charging at you, you should have a little bit of fear and a little bit of scared to make sure you get that adrenaline to get up that tree.
Oh, no, completely. It's. I mean, I can't discuss this with any kind of because I'm only just listening to this stuff, so I wouldn't give it any strength if I got into it. But it's giving me, because I needed my thinking snapped around again. I was tired. I've heard everything. I mean, in the sense of what's going on in the world. Yeah. I've been into conspiracies enough for 25 years. I don't need any of that stuff. I needed someone to get deeper in the sense of so I've been listening to this Paul Levi guy and John Lamb Lash, which are more into the sense of how big are these programs in you? Like big. They're big and they're ancient. Like as we were discussing before, some people still can't get over the idea that the doctor's not a god. You know what I mean? But I want to go deeper now into the sense of how can I be affected unconsciously by programs which I've collected from the collective unconscious and just the culture itself. Well, I'm not particularly religious, as I said, but some of it would have gone.
Oh, it's just frozen on my end. Just checking.
Yeah.
So it just froze. Can you hear me? I heard something. Not sure why.
No. Yeah. Just froze for a sec. It's gone back to a bit of freeze.
That's it. But yeah, I think when it comes to like.
So I was just going to say.
Yeah.
Well, like we were discussing before, you can see how this sort of salvationist ideology, I start to realize these are big belief systems in people, and so they can be redirected, can't they? You figure so now the salvationist ideology has been directed to the scientists and the medical establishment. So you wonder, how do these people believe these things so easily? Well, maybe they're just being, if they're asleep, they're being corrupted on levels that they can't even fathom.
Yeah, and I think I see it on two different fronts. Is I believe that we're innately born thriving on unconditional love, and that normally lasts only for a short amount of time. And then we're conditioned out of that, but we always crave to get back to that point because that's what centers and fuels us. and we look for all different means and tools to try and find what we're missing. And many never find it, and they always feel lost, and they're looking for this balance, they're looking for this harmony. And then on top of that, they've got, like you said, a system of, if you want to take care of your health, there's this mentality that I'm seeing now where it's mind. Yeah, for me, there's the mind, there's the body, there's the self. So you've got the mind, which is your intellect, your memory, your thoughts, your body, which does all your physical abilities, and the self, which is actually that life force within, like we're saying, what's in the body and continues. Yeah? But then they have to be harmonized. But we've got this priority on the mind is number one. Yeah? Intellect is number one. Let's think about this some more. And people's bodies are degrading. And I see and it's like a mother-father relationship. The mind has become this abusive, demanding dictator. And all this body wants is a little love, a little comfort. Go out and lay down in nature, please.
Well, the old saying is what? The mind is a great servant, but a terrible master.
Yeah. And I see that's a lot of people's things. And I'll give you one thing that you might find interesting is, because this is my field of expertise is in holistic health, and I study the mind, the body, the self, and it's trying to encompass the whole picture of everything. And what I've noticed with sharing information and pain of knowledge and trying to actually aid people in a journey or transition is our nervous system has two main structures that most people heard of called fight or flight, as I call it attack and defense, and rest and rejuvenation. When we're in attack and defense, which comes up at any form of stress, the ability to change a belief system is not there. All one can do is look for information that confirms the defense or the attack. Yeah. So they're not, it's not an open system, because you don't want to have if you imagine it like a castle, you don't want to have the gates open when you're under attack. So nothing's coming in, but you're going to look for things that validate the reason that you're in attack. So you say something and someone will look for triggers, because they're waiting for what am I being attacked by? Whereas when someone gets into that rest and rejuvenation of their body, that's an open system, and they can absorb information and change belief systems. But there's a state where everything is keeping us in this attack and defense. And I say it like some people are like the warrior out there covered in scars, gone out to battle, and they've even lost their castle because they've just been fighting their entire life. And they're just a lost warrior out there with this cold mentality because they're in so much pain and suffering, and they've just been suffering and fighting, and they're congratulated for their scars all over their body. But they need to come home, they need to be grounded, they need to be nurtured, they need to be rehabilitated. Yeah. But I see that's the thing right now, and I think it's a pain of knowledge and a lack of wisdom.
Oh, man, I had a big breakdown because I had that lack of wisdom. I had a ton of knowledge.
Yeah, can you walk me through it? Because I was really interested in that. And I think a lot of people would be helped by it too, because so many people have what you call the dark night of the soul, or they have that moment where life is just too hard to continue, and you can end up on pills, you can end up in all different directions. I'm really curious how you noticed that transition enter your life, and how you even broke that pattern of the medication.
Well, I don't think I can come to an answer that's pinpoint on what worked. I mean, what would have gone on for me? I thought about it. Right? Yeah, I had a lot of knowledge. I've read a lot of stuff, Buddhism and non-duality and shamanism, and I'm not claiming expertise on all these things. And just read books about shamanism and become one. But, in conspiracy, so there's tons of knowledge and stuff. But I had a lot of trauma in my childhood too, right? So I hadn't dealt with it. When I got to the UK, I could finally make money off art, doing what I wanted, meet interesting people. So, then I'm taking drugs and all this kind of stuff. Not a drug addict. Never an alcoholic or anything. But, partying for a long time. And I started about 30. Then I had a little mini sort of depressive breakdown about 2009. I went back to Australia and just went away. But really, that was the shot over the bow. Was
it like you went away into the bush, into nature?
No. I mean, it just went away.
Okay.
Went away.
It just went.
So I went back. I made a record. I stayed in Australia for about a year, and it just kind of got better. Didn't even think about it as depression, really. It Then I went and toured again for 5 years straight, hundreds of gigs a year, and just did 90-day tours here in Australia, there, you know. Not a lot of drugs when you're touring in this sense, because but still there's drinking, there's moving, there's flights, and and then you get back, and then there's some drugs, and then there's this, and then there's, so now it's just a mixture of everything, right? And at my age, so I think what you get diagnosed and then I just at the end of 2014, 13, and I just got a new girlfriend and do this and selling out tours. Then I just go into a massive depression. Bad depression. And I lose the girlfriend, go to Australia. What have I got? This is worse than it was before. And so they're going, you've got adrenal fatigue, you've blown everything out. Basically a sort of a physical exhaustion. So now I sort of learn in my crude understanding of it, you have adrenal fatigue, because I wondered, why have I got so much energy? Because I've just burned all the systems out. I'm running on adrenaline. Right, so you get this high, and then it just bang. Because if you exhausted yourself emotionally and physically, and then you're propping it up with drugs and not looking at your life, the adrenaline floods the system. Then the cortisol floods the system. Then the nervous system. Then my gut's not working, and then I had leaky gut or something. Right, so I'm not getting any nutrients. So basically, I physically collapsed into this depression because the hormones are now affected by the hormonal system, by the adrenal fatigue and the cortisol and everything. And you've probably blown your fucking brain out a bit from what? Drug use, exhaustion. Right. So this is a state of fucking chaos. Right. Then I lost my girlfriend and the whole thing. So now I've got a broken heart with this fucking depression. I'm looking for anything. My friend took me to this doctor in Sydney.
Thank you for watching part 1 of the Selfish Podcast with Steve Hughes. Click the little video there on the screen for part 2. Don't forget to hit the like button if you enjoyed this, and drop a comment. Let me know what you think. Show Steve some appreciation, and enjoy part 2.